I have never seriously read a self-help book and been like, wow, this is gonna help me in life, you know. Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lena and today we're doing the mid-year book freakout time. I know I'm making this video in like August, but at this point in life, time is fake. Everything is a social construct. To me, it feels like it's the kind of turning point of the year, August more so than June, like the end of summer, and then we're going into fall, etc. So here is the tag. The first question is, what's the best book you've read so far? For me, that would be Real Life by Brandon Taylor. I don't say this often, but I think it's one of the best books ever. It's almost like a perfect book. It follows like one weekend in the life of this PhD student who studies biology, I think, in this Midwestern university. He's gay and black, and we see him as he tries to navigate the alienation of lab work, his distance from his peers and his mostly white, middle class, upper class even friends, and the baggage from his upbringing and his traumas. Kind of explores the toxicity of grad school, dealing with whiteness, navigating queerness, sexuality, desire, your relationship to your body, and just like complicated group dynamics. It's a very rich text. The prose is gorgeous, super immersive, and it's set during this like late August time where everything is warm and sweaty, and it's this one very short weekend in his life, but everything feels so real and textured. I mean, even the characters, like characterization and imperfections and the way they like butt against each other, it feels so true to life. It's like really immersive in that way. Honestly, it brought me to tears a few times because I feel like I had never encountered such a treatment of these subject matters that was so like true and honest and like wasn't afraid to look at the thing just like right in the face, you know? It was also kind of like a way for me to question like academia and my attachment to it, and to really realize that staying any further in academia was definitely the wrong choice for me. Not that you should make your life choices based on novels, but you know, I kind of realized that it wasn't necessarily the path for me. It's a book that I would recommend if you liked On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, especially for the discussions of like class, race, sexuality. And also, surprisingly, it's like kind of a different take on the like intertwined group dynamics that you can find in The Secret History, for example. It's definitely more adult and literary and less like fantastical, or like less based on a fantasy, because the main character, he's still kind of an outsider the way that like Richard is in The Secret History, but because of his like class position and race position, and he's very much able to deconstruct some of these ideas about people he's around. And yeah, it's quite excellent. It's really, well, read it. Okay, second question, what's the best sequel you've read so far? So I've only read one sequel so far this year, and the thing is, it was kind of a letdown. So I read It Was a Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green, and I didn't find any of the like excitement and pleasure and like freshness that I felt from An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. So the first book was a great twist on like a first contact book that looked more at how it will play out in our current like socio-political, social media landscape. And it felt like really human and hopeful, and even sometimes like scary. But I feel like the second book got a bit too big for its own good. Like the stakes were so high, and the villains, also the protagonists, were so like super powered. I felt like it was hard to like buy the ending that was proposed and to buy like the it just I didn't find that tether to humanity and that deep love for humanity there. I felt even though I think it wants to be optimistic, I thought it was kind of cynical. And although the first book also had like ties to real life events and people that you could easily make, I felt like the second book was a bit more heavy-handed with the references to our universe and it didn't really feel like a whole world unto itself. And it felt almost too topical at times, even though it was made like before the pandemic. It was released in July 2020, so he couldn't have written about the pandemic, but it felt like a pandemic novel, you know? And I didn't actually like it. I was definitely let down by it. I would still recommend to read the first book in the series because I think it is strong on its own merits and it doesn't really need that addition, even though there's like a cliffhanger and like, but I would have been satisfied only reading the first book and taking the cliffhanger as like a open end or something. I think cutting the end of the first book so that it would feel more like a whole story. What's a new release you haven't read yet but want to? Definitely Time is a Mother by Ocean Vuong. I've read all of his books so far, so of course I want to read his latest poetry collection. And Either Or by Elif Batuman. I read The Idiot last year. I loved it. It was like tender, funny. The main character who's like a late bloomer in her first year at university. I think Celine, that's the name of the main character, is like so lovable and she has such a point of view. And I love how she questions everything and she's just a delightful companion. So I didn't even know that there would be a sequel. So I'm really excited to spend more time with her soon, hopefully. What's your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? That will have to be Grey Warren by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the third book in the Dreamworld trilogy, which is a spin-off based on Ronan from the Raven Cycle. I have invested so many hours of my life and so many emotions. I have so much invested in these characters. I have been with them for like more than 6 years now, and it's just, I am both excited and nervous to know what's going to come to them. And I have an inkling that like it won't be a destructive ending. And I think like the author definitely clarified that. But I think it's going to be the kind of ending that fully upsets the status quo. I'm actually excited for that because I feel like some book series don't want to have a dramatic ending that's like that shows that the world has been changed by the actions of our protagonists. And I think that Maggie Stiefvater isn't afraid to give us that. So I'm very excited. Scared, of course. I do plan to reread the series, like both series, before the release. I want to do a reading vlog, but honestly, time moves so fast that I don't know if I'll get to it. But yeah, that's in the cards, hopefully. Next question. What was your biggest disappointment? For me, that was Less by Andrew Shangrier. I picked it up from the library because I heard it won the Pulitzer. And I was curious because it was advertised kind of as like a satirical novel, and it didn't feel like it was in line with most of the other Pulitzer winners. It won the Pulitzer actually against Elif Batuman's The Idiot. I think Elif Batuman should have won that in my humble non-Pulitzer jury opinion. But anyways, what's the book about? So Less is about Arthur Less, which I think was supposed to be like a clever play on Arthur Less, like no author or something. I don't know, it annoys me. He's like this middle-aged gay man who's kind of a mid-tier novelist. He lived most of his adult life like in the shadow of his partner who was a renowned poet. And then he was like having this kind of fling thing with a younger man and ended when the man decided to get married. And so now, to cover up for the fact that he's like heartbroken or something, he decides to accept every invitation for a literary event or anything around the world. And so he goes on a tour, like he goes to
Mexico, to Germany, France, does he go to Italy? I don't remember. Morocco, Japan, and India.
Not in this order, but yeah, he goes there. And he learns nothing and then comes home and is rewarded with a great ending. That's how I felt about the book as well. To me, the ending wasn't earned at all. It was not a funny book. The character was like, I know it's satirical, but like I was waiting for the moment that I would start to like feel for him or like, I don't know, find him somewhat likable or something, that I was gonna at least root for him. But I think that he doesn't even evolve. He doesn't grow as a character, neither like for the best or for the worst. He's just like very stagnant. He's not very smart. I don't know. He's really shallow. I mean, yeah, that was a miss. I can say now that I've read a Pulitzer and hated it. So, woo. We're moving on to what was my biggest surprise of the year so far. For me, that would be an unauthorized fan treatise by Lauren James. It's kind of like Kill the Boy Band on steroids. I went into it not knowing much at all, and my mind was blown. It's a novel that's posted on WordPress. It's about this girl who's a fan of a book series that's kind of like SVU meets Supernatural. The book series then gets made into a TV show, and she's a fan of it. And in the story, she ships the main character, the male main character, and the antagonist. And she also believes that the actors playing them are like in love, dating, and closeted by the studio or the execs or whatever. So she goes on Tumblr and she makes like a master post using like newspapers and like tabloids, interviews, videos of like behind the scenes, and she compiles all of these things to make the case for the fact that they're dating in real life. Then she gets some attention for this and she decides, I'm going to look for more information, and she gets into very unsavory situations because of it. So what's interesting is that the novel is formatted as if you were reading court documents. So you know that something bad happened, but you don't know to whom or like why or how and who did it. So there's definitely a thriller vibe to it. And I think that's what I like the most about it and why it reminded me so much of Kill the Boy Band. That's actually my first video on the channel. It's because it looks at fandom and like fan devotion and takes it extremely seriously and shows like how that power can be harnessed for evil, essentially. To me, like not a lot, but I see like the two dominant discourses about like fandoms are amazing and will change the world, and also like fandoms are really stupid and silly. And I think this is interesting because it doesn't shy away from the ugly parts of fandom, but it definitely comes from a place of like respect and love and belonging, because for sure that the author has been in some fandoms that I was in and in some drama, because at some points I had to stop reading because it was too true to my own experiences of fandom, especially when you think about like the conspiratorial language, the like rhetoric used to prove a point based on like 2 seconds of footage, etc. Yeah, I just really like those types of critical novel. I don't know, it just scratches an itch. And it also sent me down afterwards a rabbit hole about like old fandom drama that literally kept me up until 4 a.m. So I highly, highly recommend this book, especially if you're like, you've been in fandom for like 10 years like I have. It's free on WordPress, so I link it below. Who's your favorite new author? You can say new to you or debut. I'm gonna say my favorite author that's new to me is David Graeber, which is kind of bittersweet because he died in 2020. But I just first read his book, Bullshit Jobs, and it was such like an eye opener to me. And I really wish that like we had his mind and like his expertise to talk about like the current moment in like labor rights. And I've everything I've read of him has been like extremely relevant and incisive and smart. And so definitely an author whose work I'd like to read more of and who sadly won't be making more books, but yeah, his bibliography will be there forever. So, US fictional crush. Well, I'm sorry to say, I do not have a new fictional crush. I haven't crushed on any fictional characters this year. I don't know if it's the types of books that I've been reading, but I don't know. I can definitely like some like horrible people in fiction, but this year no one so far. Next question. My newest favorite character. And I'm gonna say Martine from The Echo Wife. The Echo Wife is this story about a scientist. Her name is Evelyn, and she pioneered a cloning technique that allows people to clone adults and to make like adults out of adults. But then she finds out that her husband used her work to create a clone of her and divorce her for the clone. And the clone is Martine, and Martine is my favorite character. So in this universe, cloning is legal, but only because clones are not supposed to live a long life. They're supposed to be used as tools and like they're not considered human. They're considered creatures basically. And Martin kind of transcends that. And for me, it was really satisfying to see her access personhood. I've been really into stories where human-like creatures or intelligences that are meant to take the worst of what humanity can do or that are quite literally objectified gain agency, like in Westworld or in like Ex Machina. And so Martin really scratched that itch for me. He was like, yeah, she's kind of a girl boss. What can I say? Next question. What's a book that made you cry? I'm a Cancer, so most books make me cry. I cry all the time, so that's not really a high award to give a book. But I'm gonna give a special mention to No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood because I did not expect to cry during this book. It managed to turn a kind of cringe first half that was basically reading about a terribly online woman into a really tragic story about family and grief and to some extent the failings of the American healthcare system. So I remember being like in a museum cafe during the heat wave, like reading it and just like crying through the whole second half, just like I couldn't stop my tears. And so if you can bear it through the first half, that is like a thinly veiled rendering of a Twitter timeline circa 2016-2020, the payoff is worth it. Yeah, do look up the trigger warnings beforehand though. I think the book benefits from going into it not knowing anything, but you know what's best for you. So yeah, then we got what's a book that made me happy? I'm gonna pick two books for this one, and it's Bullshit Jobs and How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. They're both nonfiction book, which is very out of left field for me. They're both books that look at our like social, political landscape, online, and like the late capitalist shit phase that we live in. And they look at that without despair and with alternatives. And I didn't realize that's what I needed. Like, I'm not a huge nonfiction girly. I have never seriously read a self help book and been like, wow, this is gonna help me in life, you know. But really, these two books about like rethinking our relationship to labor and productivity, connection, and like onlineness have done a lot more to change my life and my outlook than any self help book ever could. Like, they've given me a hope that has allowed me to be joyful and like present in a way I didn't expect. And I've been able to think of like new futures. And I don't know, that it's like the happiest thing ever. Like, it's a massive gift I don't know. Yeah, I really like these two books. Like, honestly, if you feel like burdened by the ultra connectivity of social media, if you feel burdened by a need for productivity that is constant, if you feel burnt out from your job, if you feel like the pace of life is completely unsustainable for you and also for the rest of the world, you're probably right. And these books will make you feel heard and also give you something to carry with you that's not like utter helplessness. Okay, what's the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year? So it is conveniently on my shelf here, but you can't see it. I'm gonna take it. Yeah, so this is Disruption. Yeah. It's a short story collection from African writers, mostly focused on sci-fi and speculative stories. I guess kind of in the vein of my previous answer. I've turned to sci-fi and speculative fiction more lately because I'm more future focused and I want to like feed my imagination, and I think the perspective of African writers is so often marginalized or confined to like the past or the painful that I wanted something that looked to the future. And not only is it like physically beautiful with like the gradient, the bold print, the like intricate creature detail there, it's also like I think that imagining black futures is a very beautiful endeavor. So I'm glad I have this book. I still haven't read it. I am very bad at reading books that I buy. But yeah, Disruption. Also, I'm actually mad that like the tech bros use Disruption to talk about stuff that only further the neoliberal status quo. I sound very annoying right now. I'm gonna stop. What are books that you need to read by the end of the year? I've borrowed a few books from friends that are literally living at the end of the summer. They're like leaving the country. So it's definitely a priority that I read their books and then give it back to them. I'm currently reading All About Love by Bell Hooks. So I'm about like 20% through. Very good. Also, I've started God Woman Other by Bernardine Evaristo. Not really into it so far. I think the style is kind of not working for me, but I guess I'll push through until about a third, and if it doesn't work, then I'll put it down. Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. It's the German-French edition. My German is, I think, still too lousy to read it. And then I also want to read Severance by Ling Ma, Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, and House of Leaves. Maybe as like a spooky season read? I don't know. Sorry, video cut. I've yet to find a cheap enough secondhand edition of House of Leaves, but I do want to read it very much. What's your favorite book to movie adaptation you've seen this year? I absolutely loved Drive My Car by Ryusuke Hamaguchi. It's adapted from a Haruki Murakami's short story. It's about this theater actor and director who goes through a loss that kind of disables him from working. And after a few years, he's contacted by this festival and they want him to put on a play for the festival. And it's the last play that he ever played in before he had this like mental breakdown, etc. Because of the festival rules and history, he's assigned this driver to take him to and from rehearsals. And she's this very quiet young woman, but as the play starts to take shape and they spend more time together, they develop like this relationship and they bond and find a way to heal basically through the power of friendship and art. It's kind of a complicated film to explain because this is only like the surface of things. It's a very long, like 3 hour long slow burn that's about craft and grief and healing. It's definitely what I like to call a filmmaker's movie because it's kind of like the behind the scenes of making something for an audience. And there's kind of this like mise on the beam where the themes of the play that they're putting on are also the themes of the movie, and then characters. No spoilers, but like it's really good. It's really, really good. And it's just like such beautiful cinematography, and some of the images are legitimately burned onto my carny is forever. So, and it's funny because I have read one of Murakami's novel and I felt very ambivalent about it. And then, you know, I heard echoes of his like misogyny and treatment of female characters, so I steered clear of him. But this, like, it's the second movie adapted from his short stories that I like. The first one is Burning. And so I'm thinking, like, what if I like his short stories, but I don't like his novels? Oh, that's the end of the tag. Okay, we made it. Woo! In general, I'm actually pretty pleased with my reading year so far. I'm ahead of my reading goals, and the books have been mostly good. And I'm actually quite happy that I've been reading like more fiction, more speculative, sci-fi stuff. I do want to get back into poetry. That's one thing that I haven't read so far. Maybe read some plays. Who knows? I'm currently reading like 4 different books at a snail's pace because I have no impulse control and also a fucked up attention span, including 2 epistolary novels that are being delivered to me via email in real time. So that's a fun journey. So I'm reading Dracula and Liaison Dangereuse. I do not know the English. I want to say that the English title is Cruel Intentions, but that's the English title of the movie adapted from the book that was also a controversial adaptation. I do have some ideas for more YouTube videos, but I never know how life will play out, how long it will take me to like get my shit together. I'm thinking of doing like more group themed reviews that would be like mostly books, but also maybe other media. I don't know. Maybe vlogs. I mean, the possibilities are endless. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the tag. Let me know if you have one book that completely made your reading year so far, whether it's for like positively or negatively. Because I know sometimes I read one book and I'm like, wow, reading is amazing. I just want to read until the end of my days and do nothing else. And then I read one book and I'm like, wow, I've been betrayed by the community and I am mad, and then I get into a slump. So yeah, tell me how it's been going for you so far. I think I'm lucky with my reading year. I'm less happy about my YouTube year because it's been a year of me not posting anything. I'm trying to like be okay about it, and because if I'm not okay about it, then I'm not gonna post, and the anxiety and stuff gets to me. It's just like life happens sometimes. I'm just glad to be back here discussing books, and I hope that I can continue to like create and make cool stuff and have fun with you on the internet. So yeah, hope it was fun for you, and I'll see you soon, hopefully. Bye. Rainy day.